Let's get started with this next lesson. Today we're going to be able to convert, which means going back and forth, between mixed numbers and improper fractions, learning how to do that. Go ahead and write that down before we move on. All right, here's your warm-up, a little challenge for you, something we're going to get a little more into next lesson, excuse me. I want you to see if you can order these fractions from least to greatest. So the smallest value to the greatest value. Good luck. All right, so this is the set of right answers. Now, to solve this, there's two different ways you could have done it. You can remember how you found fractions with common denominators last year and try to make a common denominator. The other thing you can look at is the numerator compared to the denominator. The larger the gap you have, meaning the smaller the numerator is, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the value. So with number 1, 1/6, that's a pretty big gap. 2/9 is a gap, but not as big, and 2/3 is real small. There's only a difference of 1. So that's how you can kind of work through them. Hopefully you did well on that. Now that our brains are warmed up, let's get into the new stuff today. All right, the first set of notes I want to have you write down is the definition of an improper fraction. Now, what is an improper fraction? Well, im means not, so it's not proper. It's a fraction in which the numerator is greater or equal to the denominator. So the example we have here is 11/4. 11 is bigger than 4. That seems odd. Usually your numerator is smaller than your denominator, so this would mean that this needs to be simplified, different than what we learned about last lesson. Now, there are whole numbers that can be written as improper fractions. For example, the number 7 can be written as 7/1. Again, remember what a fraction is. The top is the parts, the bottom is the whole. So if we have 7, that means we have 7 ones. So that does make sense. When a numerator is less than a denominator, that's a proper fraction. That's what our goal is to try to make every fraction a proper fraction. Sometimes a fraction can be tacked on to a whole number to show that it's not quite the next number and next integer. We're going to look at those today as we work. So have this definition down. You can put it all down if you want. I really just need the last sentence. All right, here's another set of notes that you could write down if you want that talks about how improper fractions look and how proper fractions look. So an improper fraction, this is when the numerator equals the denominator. That would mean that it's a value of 1. So the two examples we have here is 3/3. Remember, that's 3 parts to make 1 whole, which is 3. That'd be 1 whole. Numerators can also be greater than the denominator. That's another improper, like 9/5. That means there's more than you need to make 1 whole. You could probably take chunks of wholes away from that. Proper fractions look like the ones you see there. They're always less than the 1. Now, you can write an improper fraction as a mixed number, and that's what we're going to get into first. So, here's our first problem that we're going to do in our notes. It says Ella hiked for 9/4 hours yesterday. What does 9/4 look like as a mixed number? Well, if you think about it, we know that it takes 4 pieces to make 1 whole. So you can see by the drawing here, this is the first method, you can see that if you draw fourths and you start filling them in, this is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, that gives us 1 whole. But we still have more to go. 5, 6, 7, 8. We're at 8/4, but we need 1 more. So you make another box and you fill in the 1 spot that you need. So really, how many holes do we have? We have 2. And what's the remainder as the fraction here? 1/4 or 1/4. So you add the whole numbers together, 2 plus 1, and then you add the fraction to it. And you would, or I'm sorry, not 2 plus 1. There's 1 whole, then there's 2 holes. So 2 holes plus the fraction of 1/4 would give you 2 and 1/4 shaded. So 9/4 can be shown like this as a drawing. If you want to put this one down, you can. But what I really want to teach you how to do, what to do, is to use math to be able to solve this, not just draw pictures. The second method, my favorite method, is to use division. So we learned about long division earlier this year. It kind of works the same way. And all year I've been trying to show you that if you have division problems, you can write them as fractions. So we have our bottom number that we're going to try to divide into our top number. So you rewrite it as such. 4 goes on the outside, 9 goes on the inside. And you have to ask yourself, how many times can 4 go into 9? You should realize that's 2 wholes. So 4 times 2 is 8. And then when you subtract, you have a remainder of 1. We learned about this earlier this year, and this is why you can take your remainder and it becomes a fraction. Your remainder becomes the numerator, and your denominator is exactly the number you tried to divide into n, or into 9. So the bottom number, the 4, is now your denominator, and you just write it as 1/4. This should look more common. So I do want you to copy this down since this is what I expect you to do today. So here's another problem, and I'm going to use the division method. Arnold biked for 7/4 hours yesterday. We need to write 7/4 as a mixed number. First, we're going to see how many times 4 goes into 7. And when we see that, we know 4 goes into 7 at least once. And when you subtract, you have a remainder of 3. 3 becomes your numerator, the remainder becomes your numerator, and the denominator is the divisor. It doesn't change. So you have 1 3/4 hours. So not quite 2 hours, but he did go 1 3/4 hours. So he biked somewhere in between 1 and 2 hours, closer to the 2-hour range. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to try to solve these problems. So again, I'll help you with the first one. It says the 5th largest meteorite found in the U.S. is named the Navajo. The Navajo weighs 12/5 tons. To write 12/5 as a mixed number, we're just going to divide. So how many times do you think 5 goes into 12? Well, it doesn't go into 1, so it has to go into that 1's place value. 5 times 2 gets us our closest. And we have a remainder of 2. So remember, the whole number stays a whole number. Your remainder becomes your numerator. And 5 stays as your denominator. So 2 2/5 tons would be the correct answer for that one. Try the next 2 on your own. Come back when you are done. Hopefully you got the same answers I did. So Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun. It takes 59.5 years to revolve around the Sun. That's 28 1/2 years. And Pluto, how much would you weigh on Pluto if you weighed 143 here on Earth? You would weigh 8 3/5 pounds. Again, just dividing the denominator into the numerator. If you got those right, give yourself a pat on the back. Now, just as you can go from an improper fraction to a mixed number, we can go back the other way. Let's say we were given a mixed number like 3 2/3, and you were supposed to put it into an improper fraction. You're probably thinking, why would I want to turn it into an improper fraction if it's already proper? Well, sometimes it makes it easier to add and subtract numbers or multiply or divide numbers when you have just a simple fraction and not messing with a whole number and a fraction. So the first method is you could draw a model. Again, the model, what you're drawing is based on our denominator. It takes 3 parts to make a whole. So we can see that we actually have 3 wholes. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. And in our final drawing, we only need 2 of 3 pieces shaded in. So 11/3 is actually what we get from 3 2/3. And how do I get that? I count up all the shaded areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then there's 1 that we didn't use. So 11/3 would be the same as 3 2/3. That's all hunky-dory, but let me show you how you should be able to do this using math. And you're going to want to write this down because this is the little process to remember how to do it. With math, multiplication method, what you're doing is you're changing the mixed number to an improper fraction in a spiral clockwise fashion. So here's what you do. You take the whole number and you multiply it by the numerator. Okay? And that will give you a number, a certain number. And then what you have to do with that, or I'm sorry, I did that in the backward order. First thing you want to do is multiply the denominator and the whole number, 3 times 3. Then you add the numerator. So here's what it looks like. If we have the numerator and the denominator is 3 times 3, you get 9, then add 2 to that. 9 plus 2 gives you 11. And the one thing that never changes is the denominator. The denominator always stays a 3 here through the whole process. So you're only changing the numerator. You're not doing anything to the denominator. Copy this problem down as an example before moving on. Most importantly, copying down our little drawing to explain how you do this. All right, here's another problem. We're going to look at 4 1/3. We have to change it to an improper fraction. So remember, the first thing you do is you multiply the denominator and the whole number, and then you add the numerator to that problem. So we're going to multiply 3 times 4 and then add 1. 3 times 4 is 12 plus 1 is 13. And our denominator does not change. You keep it the same at 3. So 4 1/3 is an equivalent fraction to 13 thirds. Okay, hopefully you're catching on to that. Here's some problems I want you to try on your own. There's a lot of them on the screen. I only want you to try the top part, 2 through 5. The bottom ones are there if we want to do extra practice. If you want to do them on your own, you can. Or if you're struggling and you're looking for extra help and you come to me, those are the problems we're going to do. Good luck with 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, and those are the 4 improper fractions you should have made based on our mixed numbers that you had. If you got all those right, give yourself a high five. I know it sounds funny, but I want to see what it looks like as you're giving yourself a high five. All right, here you go. Here is your box of thought. Go ahead and answer these as best as you can to explain your understanding. And your quiz, 5 questions that I want you to use where you're changing them from either an improper fraction to a mixed number or a mixed number to an improper fraction. That's it for today. Make sure you show me your stuff before you're done with your work. Then you get your homework. See you next time.